Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. We're presented by The Athletic and CLNS Media. Today on the show, we've got good friend of the program, Dieter Kurtenbach, making his triumphant return to the show. Much requested. Finally got you on since you've got the new job. How is the new gig over at Bang going?
I'm exhausted. No, it's fantastic. But I don't get to talk as much overarching NBA. Maybe we'll get into that once football season's over. But I got to do the entire Bay Area for the job with the San Jose Mercury News. I'm also fried. The San Jose Mercury News and the East Bay Times. So with Warrior season starting up, I'm excited to get back into the NBA fold of things. But I got a lot of other BS I got to deal with between now and then. But man, I'll tell you, I had this idea of this podcast that we're going to do a couple weeks back. We weren't able to get together and make it happen, but I am pumped.
Yeah, so this idea is, I'm pretty sure, you're the one who came up with it for sure. The idea was, we were just talking one day, and he goes, we should do fake over-unders for the NBA season. And what we're going to do is, we're not going to be doing like, will Andrew Wiggins score over 25 or 24.5 points per game? Or will the Warriors win over under 69.5 games? Nice.
Right. We're not taking this seriously, I think is the way you want to put it. Like, these are real things that I'm asking. Yes. But, it's this is not a serious conversation.
Yes, but they're meant to be tongue-in-cheek. And we're going to start with you. You can have the first one. We're going to go back and forth. We're going to do 10 of them, where these things are going to be like, for instance, one of the things on my list is 1.5 Rick Carlisle, Dennis Smith public disputes.
Yes, that was also on my list, and I figured that I would give the floor to you on that. So let's start it off. Let's keep it sort of outside of the general specter of the NBA, and I think that this is a good tone setter for what we're trying to get across, even though I did like that Carlisle one. And that is 3.5 viral Nick Wright is totally wrong moments this season.
Oh, no. I think Nick is actually really talented.
He's incredibly talented. It makes me very sad to see the character that they've turned him into at Fox, and he's on a new show, which is Before First Take, I think is their official name. And Nick, over the last couple of years, I worked with him at Fox. I've seen the producers at Fox who are sort of ESPN cast-offs and frankly think that they know how to market anything, and they don't, turn Nick into just this Cleveland Cavaliers fanboy. And I think there was an inkling of truth there, and they just pounded it because it got attention. And so now he's all in. He knows that that's how he's going to make his money at Fox. He's all in on this persona, this character, and it's taking what was once, I think, one of the most talented sports talkers in America and kind of turning it into a farce. And 3.5 I thought was being hyper conservative on this one, because it's really out of control at this juncture, and they just gave him like 3 hours a day to talk.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's going to go over 3.5. The problem is that I actually do respect Nick in his work. Yeah, that's tough. Nick, like you said, like Nick is super talented. He just kind of jumps into the Cleveland shit, which is a problem. Like he needs to cool off on that. But I guess that like it gets them headlines, which is okay.
Well, it doesn't get them headlines as much as it gets them attention. They don't care. They don't care about any. I don't want to get too far down because I can go on for literally hours.
I don't think he's disingenuous.
No, I think it's implicitly disingenuous because I think it is egged on by producers. I think that, again, I think there was an inkling of truth too, and I agree with him on this sentiment that LeBron James is like the greatest player ever. But the force feeding that happens at Fox on the TV side is, okay, well, LeBron is the greatest player ever, and we should respect him at all junctures. There needs to be a con to that pro, and that con is always the Warriors suck, which is essentially the tone and is like preposterously wrong. So
yeah, I think he goes a little bit too negative on the Warriors. He does.
It obviously leads to problems, especially with this Cavs season where there's so many moving parts. And I 3.5 I think was a hyper conservative one, and frankly, the key word here is viral, because I think he'll probably say something that is incorrect every day when it comes to sort of the bread and butter topic, but which ones actually make it out into the ecosystem and I guess achieve the goal that Fox wants. 3.5 viral Nick Wright is so wrong moments.
I'm gonna say over, but I respect Nick, and I think that he does a decent job on TV. He is just thrown into a mess right now.
I totally agree with the over, and if Nick is listening, my recommendation is this: get out now.
Oh boy. All right, let's move on. Let's do my initial one. 1.5, Rick Carlisle, Dennis Smith disputes that become public. Rick Carlisle is known as someone who is exceedingly hard on point guards. He is even more difficult on rookies. When you throw in a rookie point guard that can be as headstrong as Dennis Smith can be, I think we have a fun situation there. I don't know that it's going to be like flat out combustible.
Fun for us. I don't know how fun it's going to be for either party when this thing does blow up.
The issue is that Dennis is so talented that it might, like, I think that 1.5 is probably right, because Dennis is just so talented that like it might just be fine. You know what I mean? Like it genuinely just might be okay. But my over under to you is under 1.5 Dennis Smith, Rick Carlisle public disputes.
So I think this is a great number because for all the reasons you listed out, I think there's absolutely going to be one. Like, one is going to happen. The question is, do they get to 2? And it's really hard to say. It really does depend on if Dallas is playing well. I think that I've said that Dennis Smith is my Rookie of the Year pick. He's explosive. I think he's going to get a lot of opportunity. I don't think Dallas is as bad as a lot of people think they might be. They were just so pedestrian last year. People forgot that they were kind of good. Like, they had a little something going on.
They were okay.
I think Dennis can go in there and really add some dynamicism to a team that kind of lacked it last year. That said, again, headstrong, kind of a guy who does it his way. I actually haven't read anything about that, how the Carlisle Dennis Smith relationship is going in training camp and the preseason yet. So that's a good sign. I think I'm going to go under. I think that Rick knows. I think that Rick knows that. First off, this could be like 10 in private. This could be a whole thing. Yeah. But things that go public, something that's going to, I guess, hit the Sports Center threshold where it's mentioned, where they have to bring in somebody from Dallas to talk about it. I think that it will be under. I think that there will be one. I think that it will be public, and I think that both parties will do their best to make sure that anything beyond that doesn't come out into the open. So I'm going to go an under.
I'm also going to take the under here. I think that it's going to be a little bit better, but let's, again, just emphasize this is a veteran team that thinks they can make the playoffs. Harrison Barnes, one of Dirk's last years in Dallas. Wesley Matthews is obviously a vet who can really play. A lot of pieces here where a rookie point guard could fuck things up a little bit, and my guess is that Dennis is going to be the first guy that Rick blames if things go haywire.
Oh, that's definitely happening. Like, there's no doubt about that. And Dennis is going to clap back.
Maybe. I think
he will.
He's
a prideful dude. I don't.
But he didn't clap back publicly against Gottfried, though. And Rick deserves a lot more respect than Gottfried, I guess.
Yeah, but like Dennis was also gone.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. This
is
a long-term. This is a long-term place.
Doesn't need to clap back at he's gonna want to stand up for himself a little bit. Like it's gonna happen once. I don't know how bad it's gonna be. I guess if it's a small one, then but it reaches sort of that Sports Center threshold, then 1.5, the over is a good play. It really does depend on how big the first one is. If it brews for a while and blows up, I think we only get one. But otherwise, you're right. I think it actually is combustible. I think it has a chance to be there. But I also think that Carlisle knows that his reputation sort of precedes him in this regard, and he'll be cautious of speaking out against Dennis. He knows this is a long con. He doesn't want to blow it up too early.
All right. You are up with your next one, Dieter.
Okay, so we all know about the new trio. Won't call them a super team or anything like that in Oklahoma City. Paul George, Carmelo Anthony, and Russell Westbrook. And the big question that I think a lot of us have is kind of the same question we were asking last year with Golden State, but I think perhaps has a bit more credence to it, which is how the hell are these guys going to play together? And that aside, we know that, Melo wants to be the man who takes the big shot. We know that Russ wants to be the man who takes the big shot. And I think that Paul George wants to be the man who takes the big shot, even though he was sort of chastised for maybe not being aggressive enough when he was in Indiana. And so my question is this. I think the Thunder are going to be good this year. I think there's going to be a lot of close games. I don't know if they're far and away better than a lot of teams in the Western Conference beneath the Warriors. Paul George is 0 for 15 in his career on game shots that can take the lead with under 20 seconds left. He has not hit a game-winning shot in his career, according to Dave McMenamin. 0.5 game-winning Paul George shots this year.
I'm going to say over. I think he's just going to get an open one. Like, the defense is going to collapse down on Russ, and Russ is going to kick out, and he's going to hit Paul George.
Yeah, but he might hit Carmelo Anthony.
That's what I was going to say. I do think that, he is their third option in crunch time. Russ is number one. Melo is number two. He's their third best option. Melo, for all of the shit that he gets, is one of the best, clutch players that I can remember. He hits big shots.
Yeah, dude's a baller. Dude thrives in that scenario. The reason that he's not that great for the first 46 minutes of the game is the reason he's great in the final two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. So I am very, very in on the idea of Melo being a great fit with this Oklahoma City team.
Oh, yeah, no question. But who gets the ball? Late game scenario, if Russ passes at all. This is where it becomes confusing, because in any other circumstance, it's a guy like Paul George who's the third option. He should be getting that ball pretty much every time until they start treating him like the second option, in which case they go to Melo, who's and all that crap. But given Paul George's lack of success, I could have said something worse there, lack of success in such situations, given the fact that there are two better options in front of him that aren't going to be too keen to pass the ball should they get the opportunity, one of which controls the ball. I'm going to probably take the under on my own thing here, but I really did struggle. One of them would be amazing. Given history, one of them would be amazing. And I think that the complexity of this year, given the fact that Paul George should have always taken those shots in Indiana, and the complexity of what's going on in Oklahoma City only adds more intrigue to this number.
I think I'm going to take over. I think he gets one. I think that he's going to get a very open look at a game winner this year. And I know he's had them in the past.
Be his first one he makes.
I think he knocks it down this year.
All right.
Less pressure.
Yeah.
That's a good one, though. I like that.
This is my new favorite. It's been my favorite NBA stat all summer, but it's especially any league pass Oklahoma City game, I'm in, because I just want to see Paul George miss 5 more of these and it become a real thing going into the playoffs.
Okay, over under for my second one. Over under 92.5 highlight passes from Milos Teodosic. Because if you've been watching him in the preseason,
he's already at 2 in the preseason.
Oh, he's at 3 per game in the preseason. Okay. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
he's throwing full court scoop passes. He's throwing
that was awesome. He did he's just doing random ass behind the back passes for no reason. He's playing NBA Street out there. That said, it's preseason. I think they were in Hawaii. And
right.
He could have had a few beers before the game. I just don't. I don't know Milos's temperament. I know that he did this kind of shit in Europe, but you can kind of get away with it there when you're the best player in Europe. If he pulls this shit against the Warriors, I will buy a Milos jersey just because like the disrespect is real and I love it. Then you know that this is the true Milos. And 92.5 is the number.
A little bit over 1 per game.
A little bit over 1. Because there's going to be some games where he is just full disrespect.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
There's going to be a game where there's 5.
Yeah.
It's going to be known as the Milos game.
Yeah.
Okay, that is a great number. What is the threshold we are using for this? Does like Wob have to tweet it out?
Yes, we'll say 92 or like Wob or CJ0 or 92.5 highlight real passes where Wob or CJ0 or someone like that tweets it out and goes, "What the fuck?"
Yeah. Okay. I think he can get 100. I'm going to go with the over.
I had this number like 70.
I'm begging for it to be true. I want it to be true so bad.
I had this number like 70 to start, and then I was thinking, I was like, okay, he's thrown like 5 or 6 of these already that we've seen like in preseason games. So like maybe cut it down below.
Know how it goes.
Yeah, but
here's the question that I have with this: if the Clippers are good, I think that the disrespect continues. If the Clippers aren't very good, does he continue to throw these preposterous passes? Like, okay, the underhand scoop across the court, like that's not a blatantly disrespectful pass, but just like whipping it around the 3-point line with a behind the back pass for no reason is some fucking Jason Williams white chocolate shit that even he wouldn't have tried to pull off. Like, it's amazing. I don't know if he'll do that if the Clippers suck. I'm also very interested to see how Doc Rivers handles all of this, because I think that Doc Doc generally has no control over any situation, but like I'm not sure where he draws the line on showboating. Like, I guess that they haven't had that problem, considering that I know exactly where Chris Paul drew the line on showboating.
Yeah, like can you imagine a more stark difference between Chris Paul and Milos in terms of the way that they operate on the floor?
I love it so much. I love Milos. Also, the fact that he constantly looks like he's about to go smoke a cigarette on the bench is my favorite thing.
It's amazing. He is like people who watch European basketball have been like saying for years, like we've been telling you, please watch this guy. He is so fun. He's unbelievable. Despite being like 32 or 30 years old or whatever, like he's just so fun and just like incredible to watch.
He's got a little Uncle Drew in him. He's a little Uncle Milos going on.
Uncle Milos is 100% his nickname on this podcast. Uncle Milos.
But like I will say this, you told me about Milos a while back, and how awesome he was, and like you go and watch the highlight tapes and it's cool, but like we did get burned a little bit when it came to like Ricky Rubio with this stuff, because everyone talked about Ricky Rubio is awesome, like he's just all flash and like he's just gonna like revolutionize the game, and then that never really happened. Like Ricky Rubio is a really solid point guard and I love watching him play, but like it is definitely not appointment television, whereas the Clippers somehow I think are appointment television early on in the season.
Well, here's the other thing, too. So Milos has going for him something that Ricky Rubio never really did. Milos has Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan to throw lobs to.
Oh, totally.
And that's going to be really fun. They both run the floor really well. They obviously are both incredible leapers.
He can also knock down a shot.
Yeah, like he can also shoot, which creates a ton of space for him to be able to throw these goofy-ass lobs and goofy-ass behind-the-back bounce passes where nobody, like, understands what is going through his brain as he sees this angle and just hits it. Like
God bless America.
I am so happy that Milos is in the NBA.
I'm so happy that like the idea of Milos that I had seen seems to be the real Milos. Like that makes it so much better.
Yeah. No, it's like he just does this shit. It's amazing.
He's a disrespectful fucker and I love it.
Yeah, like he just does not give a fuck. Like, he does not care what everyone else thinks about him. He's like, I think he just wants to have fun. You know what I mean? Like,
what a fucking concept.
There's going to be some sort of, like, Lee Jenkins profile on Milos. Like, I don't know if Milos is going to be high profile enough to get the Lee Jenkins treatment. But, like, someone incredible is going to write about Milos and write about, like, how he developed this mentality. And it's going to be, like, the best story of the year.
Well, thanks. I'm right here. You could write it too,
There's no Athletic LA. I don't have the power to write about the NBA.
It's almost as if you could sell it somewhere. We're not getting into this. So my next one is over under 19 and a half games into the Charlotte Hornets season. Do we start hearing about how Dwight Howard isn't working out?
Under.
Okay. Now, I only said 19 and a half games because I do think that
what about negative 3.5? Like we get into like
we all know
fourth preseason game.
I'm talking like full-on Woj report or like Zach Lowe or some NBA news person like who's just been holding it in after hearing about it for 2 months. Has to be like, okay, it's over. Like we know they're starting to look to see if anyone will take them on, and they can't get anything, and they're thinking about buying them out and all this stuff. Like talking like full blown, not just like what we've already heard, which is he's a freaking weirdo and no one likes him. Okay,
I will say over on that. I think it will be
19 and a half games.
I think it will be over 19 and a half games. That's what is it? Maybe
that's
like
late
7
November.
or 8 weeks from now?
Yeah, so the reason I put it at that number is Charlotte will have a pretty hellacious 4-game stretch, which I think will sort of highlight just how bad Dwight can be. And they play on November 20th, they play Minnesota, so they get Karl Anthony Towns versus Dwight Howard. That's going to be a fun comparison.
Oh, boy.
The 22nd, they play the Wizards. Then it will be Marcin Gortat, who will probably outmuscle Dwight Howard for an entire game. Another bad comparison. The 24th against Cleveland, just the obvious fact that Cleveland is much better than Charlotte, and he'll probably get outmuscled by Kevin Love. Not a good sign. And then they'll play LaMarcus Aldridge and the San Antonio Spurs the next night on the 25th. Like, I feel like that 4-game stretch is going to bring everything to the surface.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's going to be a problem for them. And plus now they're without Nicola Batum, who it was reported today has torn ligaments in his left elbow and is going to be out for 8 to 12 weeks. So, like, I think that could go one of two ways. Like, okay, this team could, without Batum, could be like fucking 6-14.
Totally.
By the time that schedule
I think that only adds to the problem. Like, 19 and a half games, it literally could be 1.5. It could also be like an entire season. Like, we don't know. I just figured that this stretch was the best bet going into the year for something to boil up. And it's also early enough that, like, people will focus on petty bullshit like this.
So I'm going to say over in terms of like a full-on report like that. Like, like Woj reporting, they're debating cutting him. Like, this is an issue. I'm going to say over on that. I think it happens at some point throughout the year. And like in terms of rumblings, I think we're already hearing them.
Oh, yeah. Dude, like the second the trade happened, it's like, oh, we've made a terrible mistake.
Yeah. But like Steve Clifford, I think keeps it under wraps until then.
Okay. Well, I don't know if Steve's going to be able to handle it, to be honest. I think Steve Clifford's a good coach, but Steve does have that propensity to just sort of let things fly every now and again.
Yeah, that's true.
It's going to be good.
It's going to be fun. Before we get back to this conversation, let me tell you about Greats. This episode is sponsored by Greats, makers of the all-time greats, classic, stylish, and comfortable sneakers sold at a great price. Greats is Brooklyn's first sneaker company. They sell all the greats, classic styles, made the best for less. They have a wide selection of men's and women's shoes, versatile styles suitable for any occasion, tons of different colors and materials to choose from. Their best sellers include the all-leather Royale lace-up and the Wooster slip-ons. They just sent me a pair of these things. They are comfortable. They are awesome. They are stylish. They look pretty cool. I got all whites. I have not owned a pair of purely white shoes before. I'm a little bit worried about keeping them clean, but they look fantastic. You can check these out along with lots of other great styles at greats.com. And we've got a special deal for our audience. Save 15% on your first order with our offer code GameTheory. Go to greats.com. That's GREATS.com. And be sure to enter Game Theory to save 15% at checkout. Greats also believes so much in their shoes, They offer a no-risk return and exchange policy to guarantee that you get the right fit in a style you love. That's greats.com and use our code GAMETHEORY and save 15%. Thanks to Greats for sponsoring this show. Now, back to the episode. All right. My next one here. Over under 45.5 games for DeMarcus Cousins in a New Orleans jersey.
Under.
Under?
Under.
Why do you say under?
I think this thing blows up real early in New Orleans. I've been on the record on this podcast several times saying I don't think Alvin Gentry makes it to Christmas.
I think it's going to be hard.
If we're talking about that, I mean, how many more games? That's what, like 20-something games?
So 45.5 puts you right around the January mark, like mid to late January.
Yeah, I think that Cleveland, that this conversation is going to start very early, and that I think Cleveland will want both Isaiah Thomas and Boogie Cousins sort of to come back into the fold at the same time.
So here's going to be, I'll at least play devil's advocate for a second.
Yeah, please.
So let's say Alvin Gentry gets fired like in mid-December.
Yeah.
I think they're probably going to want to take at least a month of trying a new coach with Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins. So okay. I'm saying like a month before the trade deadline too.
Well, first I'd like to also establish that I do think that Alvin Gentry could get fired well before Christmas.
That's true.
Like Thanksgiving.
The issue with all of this is that New Orleans is going to be like good enough defensively to at least like stem the tide and like make this a non-potential disaster, I think.
Yeah, perhaps.
Like they were genuinely really good defensively last year.
I don't disagree with that, but the fact that they have like no wings is a bit disconcerting.
Yeah.
The fact that Rajon Rondo is there, and while we're not even arguing about the basketball player anymore, just the kind of dysfunction that he brings everywhere he goes, even if it's not his fault, just like his existence is a placeholder for the fact that not everything is going right here. That's not a good sign. The fact that the organization is in complete disarray, which I guess is why Rondo's there, I'm just repeating myself at this juncture, doesn't lend itself. And the fact that Boogie is somebody who I think he gets a bad rap, but is somebody who will let his
quiet.
He won't keep quiet, and he won't just like mention it in the locker room to reporters or anything like that. Like he'll tweet that shit out.
Yeah.
It only adds to the problem. Like if they lose 4 of their first 6 games, I think that snowball is to a point where you really can't unroll it.
So I think the front office dysfunction could go one of two ways, right? Like they could just say like, okay, fuck this. We don't want to pay this guy anymore. Like just move him. Or it could go, we're going to keep this going for way longer than it should.
They're so bad at this that they don't recognize that they're bad at this.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
They could like keep him all year, even if they're like 10 games under 500 at the trade deadline.
Yeah, no, that's true. I'm going to go the under just because I do. One, I don't want this thing to drag out as long as it has to. just on bias, like let's just never prolong the inevitable, and this feels inevitable to me. And 2, I do think that given how difficult the Western Conference is this year, it'll be pretty. I think that teams will be fast to pull the trigger. Maybe not New Orleans because again they're not good at this, but I think teams will be fast to pull the trigger and do something this year. And the sooner Gentry is fired, the sooner this trade happens. And I'll lean towards closer to Thanksgiving than Christmas on Gentry right now.
I mean, there's also the possibility that like they could just be okay.
Maybe they are.
Like having 2 of the top 15 players in the NBA like matters.
Yeah, at the same position. But that's not a very fun conversation now, is it?
No, it's not. Let's go on ahead and move on to your next one. You're up to number 4, I believe, right? Or is it number 3? 4.
Yeah. Okay. Here it is. Right now, I'm looking at the Chicago Bulls roster.
Oh no.
And I was looking at it. I guess I closed it out. Hold on. Nonetheless, the Chicago Bulls roster has on it 2 players that I legitimately know nothing about. And this is their like preseason roster, so but like some of the names on this list, okay, you know a little bit about them. Like I know a little bit about like Jarrell Eddy, who played at Virginia Tech, because I covered University of Miami basketball. I have no idea who Jalen Johnson or Bronson Koenig are.
Okay, so Jalen Johnson, Jawan Johnson or Jalen Johnson?
Jalen. Jaylen. Jalen Johnson. I refuse to click the bio.
Oh, I know who he is. Jalen Johnson went to Louisville. He could like barely start on Louisville.
He's averaging 1 point per game so far this preseason.
Yeah, he'll be like a D-League player.
No, totally. No. Like that's the case. So
Bronson Koenig, who went to Wisconsin, knocks down big shots. He's actually pretty sweet.
Yeah, well, he doesn't have a photo on the Bulls roster, so he's really killing it right now. So there's going to be obviously a lot of guys who are cut before the season starts or sent down to the G League affiliate, whatever. But my question is this: considering that I don't know 2 players, and I feel, listen, I'm not you by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel like I could say a thing that I know about most every player in the NBA, even the 15th guy on the roster. Over under 1.5 players that I could not tell you a single thing about that are on the Chicago Bulls come January 1.
Come January 1, I'll say under. Come March 15th, I will say over.
Okay. Let's change it to March 15th. How many guys on 1-day contracts that I have 10-day contracts that I've literally never heard of in my entire life?
Like, do you know who David Waba is?
I can tell you one thing about David Waba, which is I believe his rights were owned by the Lakers at one point.
Right, yeah, so he was a Lakers affiliate player.
I literally know nothing about him other than the fact that he is affiliated with the Lakers in some way. So
yeah, like he's pretty fun. But last year you would have known nothing about David Waba. So it'd be like that kind of player. Yeah, totally. I will say over on like March 1st. Like as of like March 10th or something like that. Yeah, over
because
1.5.
I legitimately went into last season and like Paul Zipser started a game, and like the Bulls didn't give me a reason to watch, and I legitimately am like, who the fuck is Paul Zipser? Like I had to have a moment. Like I just missed all of that, and I feel like the Bulls, especially once we get down to the lower end of the roster and them calling up guys from like the D League and stuff to play minutes out before the interminable sadness really kicks in. I feel like 1.5 could be low, but I also hold my own opinion in a bit higher esteem than most.
I'm trying to think like who are some of the guys like in the NBA right now, like who have like these contracts that they like for training camp and stuff that they could call up, like to kind of like, do you know who Devin Williams is? No
idea who Devin Williams is.
Do you know who Jonathan Holmes is?
No.
Do you know who Xavier Munford is?
I feel like I should with a name like that, but no.
Okay, so those are all like guys who were recently signed and like on training camp deals. Do you know who Axel Tupan is?
I've heard the name Axel Tupan before. I'm trying to think if I know anything about him. Shit, where did he go? He was in the NCAA tournament last year, right? No, okay. Did he play for the Pelicans at any point?
Yes. I think he was signed by the Pelicans at one point. I don't know if he got games.
Okay. Yes, I do. This is the beauty of listening to a lot of wonky sports podcasts. Every now and again, you get a transaction that sort of sticks in your head. I believe Axel Tupan, the one thing I can tell you about him, much like David Mwa, or how do you pronounce it?
David Waba.
Wow, I wouldn't have seen that one. Much like him, like he once was affiliated with this team. I couldn't tell you what capacity.
Okay, like do you know who Melo Trimble is?
Yes, I know Melo Trimble. He played at Maryland.
Do you know who Peter Jock is?
Who the fuck is Peter Jock?
Peter Jock was like a 19-point-a-game scorer at Iowa, who's a rookie.
Okay. No.
Derek Jones is in the dunk contest. You'll know Derek Jones.
Right. I think the other big thing too is like it can't come across my timeline even.
Like, you have to know who they are. Like, you have to have some sort of background. Like, do you know who Malik Waynes is?
No.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm going to say over 1.5 in that case. They're going to have a lot of guys like that this year.
But, I can't passively take in the information on, let's just call it March 1. Is that a fair date?
Yeah.
I would recommend we pull out the Bulls roster and you read me names, and I have no frame of reference. I don't get to look at anything, and I have to tell you one thing about each and every one of those players. Just one thing.
The problem with all of this is so by the time March rolls around, the Bulls
trust me, I'm not going to be watching the Bulls by then.
The Bulls should be cycling through potential players to see if they can find a diamond in the rough.
A diamond stone in the rough.
Do you know who Diamond
he's
Stone
literally
is?
on their roster. Yeah, he was a big fat center at Maryland.
Yeah, he was a big time recruit.
Yeah, and he played for the Clippers.
Yeah,
he's and the Hawks.
Yeah,
summer league.
He did play for the Hawks in summer league. That's right.
I know Diamond Stone, baby.
The problem with all of this is that Gar Forman and John Paxson don't run their team like normal human beings would run their team. So we're not sure that they're actually going to cycle through guys to see if they can find a diamond in the rough. We don't know if that's going to be the case.
Yeah, they might just be giving Denzel Valentine 43 minutes a night.
They really might.
Yeah.
All right. My next one. Over under 4.5 viral moments from San Antonio Spurs fans talking about the disrespect of people not talking about the Spurs being good.
Under, because people don't talk about the Spurs. Why would they talk about the viral moments of their fans?
Oh, are you really?
I feel
Spurs
like
fans are feisty.
Oh, I know they're feisty, but they're consistently feisty. They're no longer interesting. Listen, 4.5 is there. It depends on how much Charles Barkley wants to poke the bear. I mean, that's it. That's the only way you can get me back in. If Charles Barkley starts a dialogue with San Antonio Spurs fans about churros, that's it. Over under 150 times, I make the Charles Barkley start a dialogue joke this year, and it's over. 100% over. I'm going to go under just because I think that I think that ship has sort of sailed and that no one's listening. Though, listen, now I'm paying attention to it, and maybe I start seeing it a little bit more. Whatever the name of that phenomenon is, where you start seeing things once they're mentioned to you.
My favorite thing in the world is there is a thing of in that American Race show where Charles Barkley is just saying something he thinks it's very profound. It's the most absurd statement that you will ever see. And he's just staring off into the camera with a blank face. And it is just unbelievable that this show got greenlit. How did TNT decide this is a good idea? Let's have a guy in Charles Barkley go around the country and talk about race and interview Richard Spencer.
Something that happened when all of the NFL players did their sort of mass protest to Trump, which is now what we can just say it was. And they brought in Charles Barkley for the CBS pregame show so that he could start a dialogue with that ragtag panel, which includes Nate Burleson, a very smart and intelligent man who provides incredible insight to both the game of football and I think the human condition. And they're like, let's bring it, instead of talking to this man who is more than qualified to discuss, let's talk to former NBA basketball player Charles Barkley, who, as part of his new TNT deal, got to do a show about race in America where he got booed out of several town halls. Charles, what are your thoughts? Why don't you flubber through them for the next 5 or so minutes without any sort of script, if you don't mind? It was so painful to watch. I think the better question is the over-under. I'll be making the start a dialogue joke because Charles is the worst. Man. too many, but it's God, what a time to be alive. It was such a simpler time when like that existed and nobody was just like, is anyone going to say anything about how stupid this is?
My favorite was the Barkley quote that I remembered it is, he's like looking off into the camera, but it's not like he's looking into the camera. He's looking like,
no, he's got that half distance stare.
Yeah. And he goes, there are a lot of good things about the internet, but there are a lot of bad things about the internet. And I'm just like, what are you talking about?
Did he expect somebody in the crowd to be like, preach?
It's like,
what else is going on the internet, like, Charles?
Fake news in America. It's just like, why are you doing this?
Here's my one thought, and then we do need to move on before we get ourselves into any more trouble. It will all be worth it if somehow CBS News decides that Charles Barkley is going to interview Donald Trump, because at that point I'll at least know that the Republic is dead.
Oh my God. No. The question was over under 4.5 San Antonio Spurs viral moments. Really, the question should have been over under 39.5 times that Dieter uses the start of dialogue joke on this podcast.
Way over. It's like 150.
Way over.
I don't even come on this podcast much anymore.
Oh my!
It's going to be over.
Yes. Go ahead. Give me your fifth one.
Okay. This one's actually a little bit more serious. Sorry. 1.5 losing teams make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference this year.
I have something similar on mine. My question was, how many teams in the West would make the 8th seed in the East?
Ooh. Okay, let's start with mine and then we'll move to yours. So right now, the over-under win totals out of the Eastern Conference have every team in the Eastern Conference that is in the top 8, so which is making the playoffs, have a winning record. The teams that are closest to the bottom, there's sort of a threshold: Boston, Cleveland, Toronto, Washington, Milwaukee. They're all above 47 wins. But Miami, Charlotte, and Philadelphia are at 43.5 and 42.5 and 42.5 respectively. So that's kind of the threshold there. And then there's kind of a drop-off. I think like Detroit comes in 9th at like 37.5. I'm not high on Miami. I'm not high on Charlotte. And I think that Philly has a pretty good chance of being under 500 as well. So right now, Vegas says 0. I'm putting it at 1.5.
Okay. I'm going to say under 1.5.
Interesting. So just the 8th seed.
Just the 8th seed has a losing record. I'm going to say that Miami ends up with a winning record.
Okay.
And then obviously like Cleveland, Washington, Boston. Yeah,
no, I don't think there's any question
Miami,
that,
Toronto.
That like the Milwaukee and up crew are going to finish with above 500 record. I think that's a given. So it's really the 3 teams at the bottom: the Heat, the Hornets, and Philly. How many of those teams?
I think Detroit too. Detroit has a chance.
Detroit's in the area of 500. I think they're under 500.
I mean, if you made me bet, I would say they finish under 500. But if you are saying
no, they're in the conversation.
Okay, I need to find like 10% here from Detroit, or I need to find 20% here from Charlotte, 50% from X. I'm going to say under. I'm going to say the 7 is like 41 and 41. But in terms of like pure losing record, I'm going to say under.
Yeah, I have 3.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I think Miami, Charlotte, and Philadelphia all finish with fewer than with 40 wins or fewer.
If that happens, there will be a legitimate dialogue about if they need to start reseeding teams.
Yeah, I think that's happening because I think Boston probably exceeds its 46.5, and I think Cleveland probably exceeds its 53.5. And I'm starting to look at where the losses come from, and I think there's going to be a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference that have no interest in winning a game from about February on.
Yeah,
and I don't know if Charlotte and Miami and Philadelphia are going to pick up those wins. I think it's probably the teams at the top, but I'd have to do a deeper schedule breakdown. But the gap between the top and the bottom is massive, and I think that the teams that are in the middle are closer to the bottom than they are the top.
Yeah, I can see that argument. I'm going to say under, but I think that 1.5 is the right number.
Yeah. Well, at least I set the right line. So now the question that you've posed is how many teams in the Western Conference would make
the Eastern Conference playoffs?
Make the Eastern Conference playoffs. So what's the over-under there?
I did not set it.
Okay,
like.
So
I will say, hold on.
The Vegas over-unders.
I'm going to say 10.5 is the over-under.
Oh, yeah, that's a good number. Okay, so what are the teams? So, Golden State, obviously.
Golden State, Houston, Oklahoma City, San Antonio, Minnesota, Denver.
Okay.
Clippers.
Yeah.
Memphis.
I guess the question is how many teams in the Western Conference are going to finish with above 500 records, because that's like a guarantee that you're in. Okay, let me pull up my guys.
Utah's in this thing.
Portland,
that's 10. New Orleans is 11.
Memphis.
Yeah, I yelled out Memphis. Dallas would be 12.
Can we make an argument for Sacramento? No.
I don't think so.
Man, Lakers, no. Phoenix, no.
I think
12.
You can make a case for 12.
You can make a case for 12. That's really tough, though, because at a certain point, it's a zero-sum game. And you said it at 10.5?
Yeah.
I'll take the over, but I'm taking 11.
Yeah. I think it's about. I think there's a very real chance 11 teams in the West would make the Eastern Conference playoffs.
Yeah, I'm not going to bet against Memphis. That's
where I'm at too. I feel the same way. I'm just not fucking with Memphis and saying they're bad. This team has been so good for so long.
I also said a second ago that 3 teams in the Eastern Conference are going to have losing records and make the playoffs, so it's not like this is some high bar to cross over. I think that 11 I probably should say 12. I think New Orleans, even if they suck, can probably get over that bar, and maybe Dallas or Memphis are the teams that can pull it off. But yeah, 10.5 is a damn good number there. But I'm going to go with the over just because I think so little of the Eastern Conference and maybe have a little bit too much juice on some of these teams in the West.
Yeah. Last one for me here. So there are about 180 days in a regular season, give or take. Like a little bit more than that this year, but let's say right around 180. Over under 90.5 separate instances, like separate stories with a LaVar Ball headline.
Ooh. I'm going to go the under on that one.
So one every other day.
Every other day with a LaVar Ball headline. Okay, that's a good number. I think it's probably only going to be about. I think we'll get to about one a week. Just because the Lakers are going to suck, and I am very low on Lonzo. And
also, a good friend of the program, Josh Martin, out here in LA, is running a Lonzo wire.
I'm fully aware. I interviewed for that job. It's. Yeah, that's different though, because that has. If we're counting that, then literally 6 times a day.
But here's the problem with that. Though. I mean picked up national stories. But if LaVar is going to talk to Josh, I would imagine 2 or 3 times a week, that's
that's a good point.
That's going to create a lot of shit.
Yeah. At some point, LaVar is going to have to shut up for his own business prospects, though, right? Just not talk as frequently. He can't stop being LaVar Ball. But, at a certain point, reality has to strike with the fact that, and if Lonzo is the superstar that everyone has made him out to be, then it's going to be over. Just period. If the Lakers are close to 500 and Lonzo's the rookie of the year and all this stuff, LaVar's not going to shut the fuck up all year. If the Lakers suck and Lonzo struggles to adapt to the NBA and certainly doesn't have that same pizzazz that he had at UCLA, I don't think LaVar is going to be as boisterous. He will still be boisterous, but not as boisterous. So I'm going to take the under just because of how I think this season goes. But that's a good line. I think that another question on top of that is if we're talking 180 days, how many days of that 180, and I'll set the bar at 100. is LeBron James to the Los Angeles Lakers mentioned?
I mean, what is mentioned? Let's say.
Yeah, that's a good question. How about you establish the threshold to fit my number?
So, let's say like a reporter says it, like a somewhat established reporter.
I guess we could use the SportsCenter threshold.
Yeah, of like speculation. I'm gonna say over, and that sucks for Cleveland fans. But it's just going to keep coming up.
It's going to be every single goddamn day.
Yeah, it's going to be bad.
Yeah, like like just stuff like leaks into a Joe Varden article, or like Windhorst mentions it on a SportsCenter hit, or just it just shows up once a day. I think 100's fair. That means like more than every other day.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Yeah, that's about right. All right, what do you got? What do you got on Lonzo first off, and then I guess we already talked about LeBron. Lonzo, how does this go?
On LaVar, I'm going to say under. I think it's going to be under every other day.
You think he shuts up?
Huh?
You think he shuts up?
I think he shuts up enough to where it's not every other day.
I don't know, man.
LeBron, I'm going to say over.
There's going to be stretches, to be fair, when Lonzo looks good. And like the Lakers don't even have to win. Just Lonzo has to look good one night for it to be a 2-day story.
Yeah.
In which case, you're going to get LaVar for 5 straight. Like he's going to go on like hitting streaks that are going to pull up his average. It's just a streaky hitter, man. He'll shut up for like 3 weeks and then come back with 14 days of fury. Yeah. And yeah, man, that's a good number. That's a good number that you got there. I sure hope it's the under, but I don't trust anyone of our peers to not make it that.
Yeah.
LaVar Ball.
Some of my other potential over-unders were over-under 17.5 technical fouls for Josh Jackson.
Ooh. Oh, shit, that's a good one. Okay, I'll take just we're going to quick hit it. We're just going to quick hit it here, and then I'm going to hit you with one. 17.5, I'll take the under. Yeah, my question is 0.5 5x5 games for Draymond Green this year.
I'm going to say over. I think he gets one.
Okay, I think he gets one too. What do you got?
All right. Let's say over under let's say over under December 15th until you hear the first like legitimately sourced Anthony Davis trade rumor.
Ooh.
Of like, X team called about Anthony Davis and the Pelicans like laughed at them or something like that.
So essentially the Alvin Gentry trade day. Way before. Under.
Okay, I might say over there.
We might not make it to November.
Okay. Go ahead.
58.5, the effective field goal percentage of Lonzo Ball this season.
Under.
Yeah, I was going to go at 50. And then I'm like, that might be too much. I do think his 3-point shooting probably... What was he at? Shit.
That'll be fine.
He shot a long enough distance. I don't think that the arc is going to be an issue. I think that the defenders will be an issue. He was a 41% shooter last year. That's a pretty good... You can still have a pretty good drop-off and not be considered a terrible 3-point shooter if that's the number. He was 73% on 2-pointers. That's not going to happen. So... 58, I thought might have been a little bit aggressive, but that was the number I came at. Yeah, I'm also taking the under.
Over under, let's say 100 days over under 100.5 days where Mike Budenholzer is head coach of the Atlanta Hawks.
What was the number?
100.5, so a little bit past midseason.
Oh man. That is a fantastic one. Over.
I think I'm going to take over too.
Just because I think he ups his negotiation level by holding on to it. Like, he'll give it a good run. It will be very clear that he doesn't want to do what the organization wants to do and just fully tank. He'll probably squeak out some wins in the process just because he's, Bud. And eventually they will have to come to terms with the fact that Budenholzer's future and the Hawks' future are not aligned.
Yeah.
I think that he's going to need a little bit of time to prove to them to give him every single penny of that buyout and just, pay him to go away. And he might want the negotiating power of sticking around a little bit longer.
All right. Do you have another one?
66.5 wins for the Golden State Warriors.
Over. 2.5 dumbass Kyrie quotes that create headlines. Like flat Earth.
So how many woke Kyrie moments? Over on that one.
But it's not even like woke. It's like fake woke Kyrie.
Well,
he's just like fucking with people.
It's this faux intellectualism thing that he's got going on. And this was my favorite part of the whole flat Earth thing. Like we talked about this. Like we knew that Kyrie was doing a social experiment with this thing. And at the same time, it's just like, it's not clever enough that we can't discredit the notion that he actually believes this. Like, it's so transparently stupid that maybe he's not running the ruse. And maybe we fell for hook, line, and sinker. I mean, I know there were a lot of places that did, and I don't think that Kyrie Irving was sort of lashing out at the harm of aggregation in the modern state of journalism. But
I think he just likes to fuck with people.
Well, we know that. We've known that well before he decided to do it through mass media.
Right.
2.5 is going to be interesting. I mean, this guy literally went on First Take on purpose. I think he's geared up to be real weird this year. Plus, he's got that movie to promote. 2.5. The over on 2.5 is good. On
the plus side, if you're very much woke, there's no such thing as distractions. What?
Did he tweet that out or something?
No, he said that on First Take.
Oh my god. He is
Penny.
He is not as smart as he thinks he is. He really does. He really does think he's smart. Okay, final one here. Over under 5.5 ridiculous trade rumors that get serious consideration regarding Klay Thompson.
Define serious consideration.
A serious consideration, not meaning from the word. I'm talking like serious conversation. I guess I misspoke there. Serious like conversation that we talk about, like, what about if the Warriors trade Klay Thompson to the Lakers for Julius Randle or something? Yeah, some ridiculous shit like that just gets a 24-hour shelf life for no good reason.
I'm gonna say under, but yeah. I think it will happen a couple of times.
Oh, it's going to happen, baby.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. And mind you, it won't happen with Draymond Green, who is in an incredibly similar situation as to Klay Thompson, but could not be more different as a person.
Right. Like
I find that interesting.
Yeah. It's a weird deal going on there. Very weird deal. Like, it's almost like...
They're all coming back.
Yeah, I think they're all coming back, too.
Like, and it's going to be real ugly at the end. Don't get me wrong. Like, oh, my God.
But they're all coming back, I think.
They're all coming back. Like, the amount of endorsement money you can make playing for Golden State, Bob Meyer said it best, I think it was last year. I have two guys on this team that that make more money from the shoe companies. They play basketball for me as a hobby.
Yeah.
Like, that's the difference. Like, you play for a championship team, like Draymond Green playing for the Detroit Pistons does not mean the same as Draymond Green playing for the Golden State Warriors.
Right.
And, okay,
I think he uniquely understands that, though.
I think everybody on the Warriors uniquely understands that because they saw Steph do it for 4 years, and it's just in KD doing it every year. Like, I think a lot of players around the NBA understand that like being on a winning team is definitely worth like $5 to $10 million per year because you're going to make that on the side. Maybe not this year, but like down the line.
Yeah.
Like Draymond Green is going to be making $5 to $10 million a year well after he's done playing, because he's going to get much better broadcast opportunities because he's Draymond Green of the Golden State Warriors than Draymond Green at the Detroit Pistons. Like, he knew that when he signed the deal with the Warriors the first time. He'll definitely know it the next time around. So
yeah,
all of these trade rumors are ridiculous, unless something goes horribly wrong. But I put the over-under at 5.5. I think you're wise to say under, but I think deep down we all know it's going to be the over.
Well, Dieter, there are a lot of good things about the internet, but there are a lot of bad things about the internet. Hopefully this podcast was not one of them. Dieter, tell the people where they can find your work at your new job.
Yeah, for the time being, until this thing comes out, you can find me at San Jose Mercury News. And you've been saying for a long time, Dieter, why don't you have your own podcast? And now every single day, you have evidence as to why this shouldn't have happened. The Daily Dieter podcast on V Sporto, and you can subscribe to it on iTunes. If you really enjoy a person rambling on about Bay Area sports and really breaking stuff down for about 20 minutes at a time, talking to himself, that's what you're looking for. But pretty much my columns are the same thing. So at least this time you can consume it in the car.
Go follow Dieter over at D. Kurtenbach on Twitter. Follow his work.
Let's start a dialogue.
We're going to start a dialogue over at Bang, the Bay Area News Group. Dieter, thank you for coming on.
Oh, I'm so screwed. It was fun, Sam. We'll talk soon in the unemployment line.
Oh, my God. You can find the Game Theory Podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, Android, anywhere where they have podcasts. We're up there. We'll be back next week at some point. Please go subscribe to The Athletic and keep me employed. That'd be great.
Do that.
Until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.